Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the February 27th, 2019 meeting of the Danville-Boyle County Planning and Zoning Commission. Thank you for your attendance. Appreciate you being here this day. As tradition, we'll begin our meeting with prayer. Our God and Father in heaven, we thank Thee for this beautiful day and all the blessings of it, the health You've given us this day and letting us rise another day. We thank Thee for this community we live in, this country we live in, the freedoms we enjoy, all the blessings You bestow upon us each day. Continue to pray for our servicemen and women who serving our country to protect and defend our freedoms. You would be with them, bless and comfort them, protect them. Let those conflicts, fightings be resolved. Bring them home to their loved ones as soon as possible. Be with us as commissioners today. Help us make decisions that are better for this community and betterment for all those involved. Guide, guard, direct us in all things. In Christ's name we pray, amen. Amen. Item C, approval of minutes, January 23rd, 2019.
I move we approve.
Terry moves we approve.
I second.
Vince seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor. This time I'd like to introduce Sonia Kitchen. Sandra is a new member of the P&Z Commission representing Junction City, who favorably have been approved to rejoin planning and zoning, and we're certainly glad to have them back in, and certainly hopefully things will go well and with Junction City. And Sonia, we're glad to have you, and really are pleased to have Junction City back in with us. It seems like we're not divided like we were a little bit, and now we're hopefully all one community, so to speak, and all of us working for the same goals and to betterment the community throughout the county. So again, I'd just like to say thanks for Junction and taking the steps, and Stephen taking the steps necessary to get Junction back in. Really glad to have them. So Sonia, good to have you, and thank you for being here. Item D, financial report, January 2019.
There's no comment unless you guys have any questions. It's in your packet. We got a preliminary budget approval later on, and there's probably more discussion needed there. But I'd be glad to answer any questions on the balance sheet or the finance report if you all have any questions.
I make the motion we approve.
Terry moves we approve.
Second.
Wendy seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Item E, construction sureties. I'll get it right, maybe.
Just courtesy report in your packet as every month. No defined action we need to take. Again, just shows all the cash bonds we're holding and the one renewed letter of credit. I will mention the maple tree drainage is ready to bid at any point. Again, the city has indicated they'd like to help us with that. But we need to get that moving, as well as this Fox. We've been working a little bit behind the scenes on that Fox gate. Those are simply street lights, and I talked to KU. There's some street lights on half of that circle, and there's above ground wires. The existing transformer boxes are to the rear of those middle lots. So it should be pretty easy to put street lights around the rest of the horn there, and it should be really easy to get it done. But again, hasn't been done for a while, and the city does have to take the lead on that. So we'd like to get those done. Several neighbors have contacted me about getting those street lights put in on that subdivision. So hopefully when the weather breaks, we get both those projects rolling and finished before summer. And again, we don't need any action on this. It's just a report for your all's information.
Item F, several subdivision approvals. We'll just take those one at a time. Stephen and Martha Taylor, subdivision approval, 125 acres plus, Elk Cave Road, gravel switch.
Yeah, all our surveyors are here, I think, except maybe one, and there are 8 plats here in a row. I'll be glad to go through them pretty quick, but they're all here if you guys have any questions or need any details. Of course, we have large copies around if you all need those, but you got the reduced copies in your packet. This first one you guys have actually seen before. This one came to you just a month or so back and was approved in the preliminary fashion. However, it got revised. There's been another 5 acres added. If you remembered, this plat is half in Boyle County, half in Casey County. And there's basically some land swaps going on here. This added another 5 acres, and so it had to go back through technical review. They looked at it, everything's fine. It's ready to be approved. And again, Dale's here if you guys have any questions with AGE, but again, we swapped some property that's all in Casey County this second time around. It has,
Any,
go ahead. It has to be recorded in both counties.
anything you want to share, Dale, on this?
We're just waiting on signatures from the owners.
Okay, thank you. Questions or discussion? Hearing none. Motion.
Motion approved.
Vince moves we approve.
Second.
Jim seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Number 2, Whiskey Service LLC, subdivision, 43 acres plus, 4300 Lebanon Road.
Yeah, and again, I put these on the screen for the folks in the audience. I forgot on that first one, but all the plats are up there if they need to see them in order. This one, again, was on your agenda, then withdrawn prior month. As you guys know, we call them IJW, but Whiskey Services is buying additional acreage from the Boyle County Industrial Foundation, which is to the north, up there at the top. And last month, if you remember, we had a preliminary plat. It was about 12 acres that got pulled because they were still in negotiation on the final acreage. It's now 13 and some change, and it's in a little different configuration. And you can see again, real easily on the plat, this is being added to this piece to the south. And again, it makes the acreage that you heard the chairman describe, 43 plus. And this now would be IJW or Whiskey Services' new lot. And you'll see a site plan later on in your agenda if this is successful as we're moving forward with more rick houses. Went through technical review, everything's looking good. Kendall's here with Vantage if you guys have any questions for him.
Any comment on this, Kendall? Anything you want to share? No. Okay, thank you. Questions, discussion? Hearing none, motion.
Move we approve.
Jim moves we approve.
I'll second.
Terry seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Number 3, Highpoint Family Farms, 20-plus acres at 0 Goggin Lane.
Alrighty, again, went through technical review, had a few little small things. Nancy's here with Estes, and they have corrected those already. In fact, they're laying in front of the chairman. All her plats today have been corrected already. And this is pretty straightforward. This says Goggin Lane, and it's hard to see a location map. We didn't have a reduced copy, but this is on the southern end of Goggin Lane. If you were coming from the south off Lancaster Road, it'd be a property to your right, just a little piece up the road, cutting off a 20-plus acre tract. And pretty straightforward. It's coming off the farm, off track 9, and met all our requirements. And again, we don't actually, when they're over 5 acres, it's just a farm track. We appreciate getting it in. And just Nancy's here if you guys have any questions.
Anything you want to add, Nancy, or any comment? Okay, thank you. Question, discussion on the presentation? Yes.
Is the pipeline runs through that property?
I have to defer to Nancy on that.
The plat that you have in front of you shows the pipeline.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, we need a motion.
Motion approved.
Wendy moves we approve.
I'll second.
Terry seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Number 4, Jack Shipley, subdivision of 20 acres at 0 Nield Road.
Yeah, this one also went through technical review, met our requirements, is corrected. Nield Road is just a little piece up here at the end, and this property had frontage there, and then this track 1 came off of this property, track 2 was here. These are being consolidated to make a nice clean 20-acre tract. I say nice and clean, it's got a kind of nice arrowhead shape there, but it is what it is. This is how the property owners want it. But again, nice clean 20 acres right there, 20.000, becomes tract 2A, and again consolidates as A1 and 2 with its frontage over here on Nield Road. Nancy's here again if you guys have any questions. And again, everything's been corrected from, what was correct from the get-go, and it's ready to record if you guys approve it.
I move we approve.
Terry moves we approve. Vince seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Number 5, Coulter Estates, subdivision, 5 acres, 900 Hogue Hollow Road.
Yep. Another Nancy Estes plat in front of you guys. There's the reference to Hogue Hollow Road. You guys, I think all know where that is. There's the 5-acre cut. Exactly 5.00 acres. We did not have any issues in technical review. And again, Nancy's here to answer any questions on this 5-acre tract being created.
Questions or discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Terry moves we approve. Vince seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Number 6, Betty Sawyer, 5+ acres at 13130 Highway 34, Perryville.
I promise these will get more exciting, but unfortunately, this isn't the one. Again, pretty straightforward. AGE's here, Dale's here. This is a 5.008 track on Kentucky 34. It's actually been laying around the office for a while. Went through technical review several months ago. The Sawyers just had some housekeeping to get it ready to take to the final stage and then ultimately get it to the courthouse and be recorded. Dale knows more about all that end of it, but as far as our end, meets all the technical review requirements, and they recommend approval to you guys. Dale, is there anything I'm leaving out on that? It's been, I think it's been, what, since last May, somewhere in there? Well, May is when we got it of last year.
Questions or discussion?
Move we approve.
Jim moves we approve. Wendy seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Number 7, Boyle County Industrial Foundation, 19+ acres at 0 Lebanon Road.
Alrighty, this one's got a few moving parts, but not a big deal. This is the Industrial Foundation, and then the American Greetings is over this way on the left. This is what we did recently that was a retracement plat, 6A and B. This is the bypass, and this is 34. What we're doing is this, initially this sliver was gonna come off of track 8, which is right here. And now it's coming off of this track and being added to 6A. At the same time, the railroad track or spur is being kind of, that the Industrial Foundation owns, it heads down this way, is being conveyed over to this track 8. So track 8's new configuration would have about a 20-foot strip, will be this configuration, 6A will be this configuration, and 6B will be that configuration. So it's just a bunch of kind of moving the lines around there on the corner of the bypass on behalf of the Industrial Foundation for a future client or something of that nature. Again, Jody Lasser's here if you guys have any questions, as well as Dale from AGE that did the plat, did go through technical review, met all our requirements. And again, we're just adding that little half-acre tract to the north, and then it's less than 4/10 of an acre on the west side to track 8.
Questions or discussion?
I move we approve.
Terry moves we approve. Wendy seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? It's unanimous. And item 8 for commission's information did not go through technical review due to the fact that it, what, Stephen?
I came in just a tad bit late. It's a surveyor I personally haven't worked with out of Lancaster. And the property owner brought the plat in literally just after we had met. I reviewed it, again, talked with our technical review folks and said if you guys are okay with this, we could approve it today. There is a real estate closing right behind us here. And what we're basically, this is Baughman, whoops, and there's the way the property looks. It's kind of a 4 and some change acre. There's a house right here. The church is right next door. And then there's a mobile home park past that. This house is being sold to a gentleman from the property owner, and we need to cut the house off. It's zoned GRB, which allows us to get pretty small, but they're actually creating a 1/4 acre lot for the house. This is a zoom in of the house. It meets all our setbacks, all the requirements, and what the new owner wants to see on his lot. There's a building back there, a little building, and a driveway to the west. So it meets all our requirements, and it's technically correct today. And if you guys are okay with that, we would move that one forward so they could get to their real estate closing for this new buyer. Again, that's the zoomed in. That's the way the lot looks. There is zone GRB. And what will be left is about a 4 acre tract that you see to the side and to the rear. And not much more.
I forgot to mention, this is at 504 Baughman Avenue, just for the record.
Zone GRB, which
forgot
is
to
our
mention that.
small lot residential district.
Questions or discussion?
I move we approve.
Jim moves we approve. Vince seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous.
Thank you, guys. And again, the surveyor promised he would meet our deadline next time, and the new property owner will be extremely appreciative of that.
Item G, public hearings. Number 1, new Circular Wireless PSC. Alvin and Martha Lee filed telecommunications application, tract of land containing 138.71 acres, Whites Ridge Road, Parksville.
Yep. I'll start off very quickly, and got a few exhibits up here. We have a representative from Pike Legal Group that represents AT&T Mobility or New Cingular, Mr. Robert Grant's right here behind me. There are some folks I think that want to speak in favor and possibly opposed for this. The property owner's in the room too. But just for a quick reference, there's our zoning map right off our website, and that gives you a good reference point of where we're at. This is the Lee property out here in the Forkland area, and it just shows you a reference in relationship to Danville and Perryville and Junction City and our entire county and really the counties around us. Again, that's just right off our website. There's a zoomed in piece, again, right off our website, shows a little bit of the knobs, which is part of the reason why the tower is being placed out in this area. A is to deal with service, and B is to get it up in the air. And as you guys know, we have some elevation out here that goes up and down, and there's the property, and the tower is going to be located in the back of the property. We'll show you in a second, but that's actually the parcel lines of the farm, and again, the relationship of the roads and where we're at in the county. This is some of the exhibits that the applicant has filed. Our attorney up there has the actual, well, I'll just point this way. This attorney right here has the actual application in his hand. They by federal requirements and state requirements, have to turn in a fairly thick application. You guys just got a subset of some of these plan sheets, but it is a very detailed, thick application. There was also an additional handout at your seats that the law firm forwarded to us prior to the meeting. And I'll just show you a couple sheets and won't steal his thunder there, but there's the, again, there's the property that we just saw. There's kind of a drive that'll get us back to a lease area. That's a 75 by 75 lease area that would be on the Lee farm. There it is zoomed in a tad bit closer. We start to see fence and structure, and you can obviously see the tower. There's what the tower looks like as an elevation, showing that we could have multiple carriers in relationship to some of the ground infrastructure. And Again, I don't want to steal their thunder, but here's the coverage maps. I thought these were two pretty cool exhibits that were in the packet. Shows us the area, and this is basically what we're talking about right in here. Green is good. White, not so good. The other colors, I'll let the attorney explain some of that, but that's basically what kind of coverage we have out in that area, which is pretty much non-existent. This is what happens when the tower is, I guess a technical term be deployed, I don't know. But when the tower goes up, there's what changes. So again, pretty dramatic. And I'll let the attorney talk to us about that. And then he gave us some exhibits, and again, I won't get into these. But there's a couple other exhibits they asked us to put on the PowerPoint. In addition, at the very back, there's about 200 other pages that are there that they may want to reference, or you guys may have a question on. They're prepared to answer a lot of different questions on a lot of technical things that go way beyond my degree. So again, with that, unless you guys have any questions to me, I may just hand it off to Mr. Grant and let him kind of take it from there. Unless you all have anything for me. Okay. This thing moves side to side, and that's the thing on the top. Thank you.
Excuse me, this being a public hearing, when you come to the mic, need to introduce yourself, give your name and address, and a couple of things I would request. The last public hearing we had, we got into a he said, she said, he said, she said. No, I didn't, yes, I did. So we'd prefer not to beat a dead horse like that. And so what I would like to ask you to do, as nice as possible, if you have something new, that's fine, but if it's already been said, we really don't need to hear it 2 or 3 or 4 times. Secondly, we'll give the lawyers an opportunity to present and do rebuttal. And for as you speaking for or against, we just ask you to do that one time, and hopefully that'll help us be more efficient with our hearings and not take forever and ever to simply get through. So with that in mind, we'd appreciate it if you follow those guidelines. It'll help us all to be more efficient with our hearings. So thank you, sir, for being here. Introduce yourself, name, company, and so forth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Robert Grant. I'm an attorney with Pike Legal Group. We represent AT&T Mobility. We want to thank you for having us here today to cooperate and collaborate with this community in bringing public utility infrastructure where it's much needed. As you've already seen from the coverage plots before and after, there's not much coverage in this area. Wireless communications is how we communicate with the world now. It is the technology of the 21st century. And it's not just voice anymore. Our smartphones that we carry in our pockets are computers. And so the vast majority of what happens with this technology is the transfer of data as opposed to voice. Data gobbles up our bandwidth. But what we do with these phones now, as you well know, is that we do our banking on them. We make a purchase at Christmas time from Amazon. We watch the latest episode of Game of Thrones. You know, we stream movies, we stream music. We reach out and communicate with the world. And even old-fashioned, we text a loved one that we're running late, we're going to be home soon. So this technology is a matter of public convenience. It makes our lives easier. But more importantly, it's also a matter of public safety, because 70% of all emergency calls, E911 calls, are made with a wireless device. According to the CDC, 55% of all homes rely exclusively on their cell phone they have no landline, they've cut the cord. So when you need to make that emergency call, you want to have reliable service so that you can get that ambulance, that fire, the police, whatever first responder you need to get to your home for the safety of yourself and your loved ones. part of the technology that we'll be deploying is that this will connect this part of the county to AT&T's FirstNet network. It's a national network that connects to all first responders, gives you access to first responders. See, we've got Mike Wilder here from the emergency services here in the county, okay? That's one of the technologies we'll be deploying with this particular site. One of the other technologies we'll be deploying is something that's emerging is fixed wireless local loop. AT&T's participating with this deployment in a program where not only do you get improved cellular service, you're going to get access to vastly improved broadband internet service, back to using your phone to stream that episode of Game of Thrones, or to do your online banking, or to do the other things that you may or may not be doing with the phone. This is an area that's currently unserved or poorly served, and this area deserves state-of-the-art technology, and that's what we're bringing in. This community deserves it. We're proposing a 195-foot monopole, which there are 16 towers in Boyle County within a 10-mile radius. The nearest tower is 4.5 miles away. That is 4 miles outside of the area where our engineers say we need to be to fix this gap in service. But of those 16 towers within 10 miles, 13 or 14 of them are taller than the tower we're proposing. So as the technology improves and the data usage explodes, we have to put in more sites because the coverage area shrinks a little bit. But the towers, one of the payoffs is the towers are getting shorter. What this does is that we're proposing a tower, since it's under 200 feet, will not require any lighting on it. The lighting that when we do have to put it on it, it is for the safety of aircraft, yes. So the nearest airport is 10 miles away, so this is not going to pose any safety to air traffic. There won't be any blinking lights on it that are going to be shining in anyone's windows at night. As you can see from the parcel map that we showed earlier, this is a 100-acre parcel. And that we are located to the rear of the parcel. What that does is that gives us a 2,100-foot separation from the roadway and the parcels and homes. That's nearly a half a mile away. The nearest residence is going to be 1,900 feet from this tower, which is, not quite a half a mile, but it's a pretty good distance. So this is a site that's well situated, it's well located, it's well separated from area residential uses. Both the tower and the access road leading to it is going to be located entirely on the Lee property. I know that sometimes there's some confusion with the exhibits that we send out. State law requires us to put a halo around both the tower of 500 foot and a halo around the access road. That halo bleeds out across the road. That creates some confusion for folks. They think that maybe we're going to be using a part of their property, but that's not the case. This is entirely on the Lee property. We have slides here and a presentation that we have put together. Here's the blue. The blue that you see here is the halo that we're talking about. I know that we've received some calls from neighbors. The access drive is the double black lines down the center. The halo is nothing more than just a tool to help us to make certain that we give notice to anybody who's within 200 feet of that. You've already seen the before and after coverage plots. There's a very detailed radio frequency need report that's been filed with the application that outlines the need for this facility. This is an area here with white is no or very poor coverage. Green is what we're bringing into this community. This is going to vastly, vastly improve service to this area of the county. One of the very first things that we do when our engineers determine there's a need for a new structure in an area is we look to make certain there aren't any existing tall towers that we can co-locate on. In this instance, as you can see down towards the bottom of this slide, the nearest FCC registered tower is 4.5 miles away. That's outside of our search area. This is the area that our engineers say we need to be in to solve the service problems in this area. That's a 1/2 mile radius. And as you can see, this is a pretty remote mountainous region where we're going into here. The tower, we have an FCC license that we take very seriously. We have to comply with FCC requirements. And this tower will be designed and constructed in full compliance with all FCC requirements related to RF emissions. Under both state and federal law, this planning commission is prohibited from considering the environmental health effects of one of these structures. But we'd like to let you know, that this tower's been designed in compliance with all those, fully in compliance with all those requirements. Our team, our site selection team, when they get a search area, they go into the area, and the very first thing they do is they look for an existing tower. As we've already said, there's no towers in this area. Then they look at other parcels. They look for a suitable parcel. Typically what they look for is a very large parcel, like this 100-acre parcel, one that provides good distance from nearby residential uses. What it does, the nearest home is 1,900 feet away. This provides good separation in terms of proximity to their home, while at the same time providing outstanding service to them. The service range for this tower is going to be, depending on which of those services we talked about, is going to expand service 2, 3, sometimes 4 miles outward. What it's going to do, and it will overlap with the nearest tower 4.5 miles away. The term cellular technology comes from the idea that our network looks like a honeycomb. And all of these towers communicate with one another, and they're all laid out in a honeycomb pattern. And the signal, to be effective, has to overlap with each tower, so that, for example, when you're driving down the highway and you're on a call, which you probably shouldn't be doing for your own safety. However, if you're making a courtesy call to your spouse and explaining why you're going to be late, what it does is you drive down the highway, the signal is handed from tower to tower to tower to tower. That's where we get our overlapping network. This is a map showing all the towers within the county. And of course, as I've already said, the nearest is 4.5 miles away, much outside of our range. The tower be designed with a zero fall zone radius. There's no safety risk to any of the neighbors, which are already well separated. And so this application, I'm not going to go through this entire PowerPoint presentation. It would take 45 minutes to get through it all. And the slides that we're getting to are a lot of slides about the law involved in the case. This law has been provided to your attorney. And but just briefly, one of the things that I'd like to say is this land use is public utility infrastructure, and it is vital to the economic growth, development, and safety of not only this community, but us as a nation as a whole. And for that reason, Congress got involved in ensuring that this technology is deployed. And so they passed the Telecommunications Act back in 1996, which is a very, very rare intrusion by the federal government into what is typically an entirely local matter. You know, land use and planning is, as you guys know, is typically very local, and the concerns are very local. But in this instance, there's a bigger picture at stake. So Congress got involved in this and intruded itself into what is typically your domain. What that does between the congressional, the federal law overlay and the state law overlay is that puts this planning commission in a commission where it's your job to review an application and to determine whether or not we comply with all the requirements of your zoning ordinance. And in this instance, your zoning ordinance, your wireless regulations, almost to the T, mirror state law. It's a mirror copy of state law. This application fully complies with state law. It fully complies with your regulations, and it fully complies with federal law. What that does is that puts you in a position of just simply looking at this, making a determination that it's in full compliance, and then approving the application. However, this is a public hearing, and the public is invited. I know that I've taken some of the calls. Mr. Hunter's taken some of their calls. I know they have some questions and concerns. What I've looked to do here is to address those concerns as best I can in advance, and I hope I've answered those. But if and when they choose to speak and come up to the podium, if they have any further questions, I'll be happy to answer those. As a matter of housekeeping, this PowerPoint presentation and all of our supplemental materials, we'd like to make all of that part of the public record. If you have any questions about the slides that follow and all the law, I suggest you ask your attorney about those questions, or I'll be happy to offer any answers that I can. With that, I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to answer any questions that you may have, and then I'm going to sit down and let the public speak.
I'd just like to go down the line. Jim, you have anything you'd like to ask? We'll just go. Okay. Terry?
The only question I guess I had is part of the law that talked about Congress passing in
Yes.
1996.
Yes, sir.
Does it mandate coverage based on population density, or is this strictly a market-driven thing where AT&T says there's enough customers here that we would like to provide coverage to them? Does it mandate any type of coverage?
I don't know that the Telecommunications Act of 1996 does that. But the stated purpose of the law is to remove the barriers to the rapid deployment of this technology, and the goal being that this country be blanketed with this technology. Now, our FCC license has some very strict requirements about us providing service to the communities. And so that's kind of a related issue, and we take our license very seriously. It's our livelihood. But more than that, we partner with communities like this in bringing this public utility infrastructure into the community. You know, it's part of what we do. It's our mission and our mandate to do that. This particular deployment by AT&T is like no other I've ever been involved with, and this answers to some extent your question. In the past, and I've been doing this for 15 years, in the past, our deployments tended to focus on urban areas. And in urban areas, I also include towns and county seats and places like that. But what got neglected are the nooks and crannies of the county. And this particular deployment that started in 2016. So it takes time. We had nearly 300 sites, and we're furiously working in presenting these applications and getting them out. Nearly 300 sites that are almost exclusively remote rural areas like this, bringing service to them. So answer your question is, I don't know that I can say that there's a mandate in that statute, but it's our mission to do that.
Anything else, Terry? Wendy, anything? Vince?
Couple things.
Yes, sir.
I think it's great to provide equal opportunities for rural customers to be safe and stuff. You made a passive mention of broadband. That's underground, right?
This is wireless broadband that we're bringing in with this fixed wireless local loop. It will be expanded broadband service to this community, and it'll be wireless.
Well, I mean, you implied the like cabling type. Maybe I was wrong in assuming that, but.
I think you just made an assumption.
Okay. I mean, because there's been a lot of instances where in this town, recently at my house, where they drilled through the sewer line with the broadband and caused $50,000 worth of damage. So, I mean, I just think that there's some issues if you're going to be doing underground stuff, that it's not the only place that this has happened in Danville. I'm not mentioning that.
That's not what we're doing, sir.
Okay, I just want to
Okay.
make sure
Yes,
that
sir.
it's not anything to do with that.
I know about the frustrations of that. I live in Louisville, and Google was going to bring in fiber optic lightning speeds way beyond anything we have now, and they decided to pull out. So I was a little frustrated with that.
Sonia, anything? Just a couple things. You mentioned the halo. Can you just define that in layman's terms, what that is or what it's about?
Yes, sir. State law requires us, if I can find that, here it is. State law for notice purposes, state law requires that when we file a uniform application, which we've done here, that we give notice to any resident, any adjoining property owners within 500 feet of the tower. If you look at this drawing, that's the red circle around the tower. Any property owners within 200 feet of the access, that's the blue circle that you see right there. And any property owners that adjoin the parcel. Now, because in this instance, this is a large 100-acre parcel, so there's quite a few property owners that adjoin that we sent notice letters to.
Okay, so basically it's just an area of notification.
It's just an area of notification, that's all it is.
It's nothing electronic shooting.
It's nothing electronic, it has nothing to do with any of that. You know, we send this drawing with our notice. I get calls all the time. This confuses people all across the state. So it's pretty common for folks to be confused by that halo. And it's our goal to make certain that they know where this thing is going so that they're well informed. So we provide this drawing even though we know sometimes it confuses folks. We've tried to figure out another way to do it, but it seems to be one of the best ways to let everybody know so that they can look at the map and say, okay, I live here and it's going to go over there and I can see, you know, where this is in relationship to me.
Okay. Secondly, should this be approved, and once it's finalized, what's the construction schedule start to finish?
As I said, there's nearly 300 sites in the state. So once it's approved, it goes on the build plan. And it'll get built. That build plan is fluid. And by that I mean a site that was approved 6 months ago might be moving up towards the top and then something change internally and it get nudged back down. And one like this one could get approved and be built in a month. All I can tell you is it'll go on the build plan and it'll get constructed, and we're building these things as fast as we can, but we got a bunch of them across the state. I can't say for sure when exactly that will be.
What's the general time frame for physically building it? What does that usually take?
The construction process itself is 2 to 3 weeks to put steel in the air and to get the antennas up live, and that is the only traffic, the construction traffic going in and out for 2 to 3 weeks. Once it's on the air, it's an unmanned facility, and we'll have maybe a small pickup truck go out there once a year to check on everything. So it doesn't really generate any traffic in the area at all.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned it's under 200 foot, so it's not required to be lit.
Correct.
It's right under 200 foot, 190 something, some change. I did meet with the airport board manager. I took an application out of a courtesy and met with him, even though it went through KZC and everything looked good there. He indicated the same thing. It's way far away from the airport. But if by chance someone wanted it lit, is AT&T opening to lighting the tower that close or putting beacon on that? If for example, the airport said, well, it'd still be good if that one had a light on it, or you guys kind of firm that it's under 200, no light, over 200, we put light on it. Is it flexible? And then secondly, would you guys be willing to follow back up with the airport manager just to fine tune some of that? He seemed to indicate it's pretty far away, but it is up on the high knob and there are folks that fly around. Didn't know what your all's policy on that and how we kind of move forward with fine tuning that exactly to what the airport hopes to accomplish there.
Sure. The answer to that question is the lighting requirement, the FAA review, and the KAZC is the Kentucky version of the FAA, and their requirements are minimum requirements. So in this instance, they don't require it for air safety. However, if for some reason or another it was desirable to put lights on it, we can certainly do that. And so, in answer to your question is that yes, we'll meet with the folks at the airport and discuss it with them, okay?
And the
Yes.
airport is 1,022 feet. So if the structure is put on a hill, like you're saying, that would actually make it much higher than, you know, I hope that's figured into the, you know, not the measurement from where on the ground the platform stands and how high it goes, but if it's really higher in the knobs, like this, much higher than that 1,022 feet, then for all intents and purposes, if this one's 1,300 feet, it's 300 feet higher to start. Okay, I mean, that's, to me, that would be, makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I hope they would make a measurement that would be from the airport at Stewart Powell Field, from 1,000 feet, because that's the operation of aircraft. that's involved. You know, if you're taking a tower and putting it another 300 feet higher, and the minimum, let's say, is 200, right? And it starts at 300, you're already over the amount. See what I mean?
Yeah, the current elevation at this site
Yeah,
is 1,187 feet.
So you got
give or take.
187 feet that's too high.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
I understand.
Yeah, so I mean, that was, just to look into it. I mean, I'm not an engineer for sure. But I do know that for sure about the airport, and it's, and also the planes, the runway runs directly out towards the knobs. Okay? It runs directly out that way. And the safety zone is on the safety zone's on both sides. So therefore, there are gonna be a lot of planes flying directly over that area, from what I can tell. I mean, but I don't have exactly the degrees, but I do know that that's on the runway's here. That tower's gonna be here. The main runway is
Right.
there. And when they circle around, on certain days, they circle to the west. Okay? So they circle to the west, and then they come back. I believe that's pretty close to that area, but I wouldn't be knowledgeable enough to measure that.
Well, as I said earlier, our mission is to provide this public utility infrastructure and to provide for the convenience and safety of the public. And so the lighting requirements are for air safety, and we all want, you know,
I just wanna make
we all
sure-
want those pilots and their passengers to be safe.
Just to bring it up, I saw.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions from the commission, what I'd like to do, Mr. Grant, while you're there, is just, if there's any questions from the audience, maybe go ahead and answer those questions, and then we'll give members of the audience a chance to either speak for or against this plan. So is there any questions from the audience you'd just like to ask Mr. Grant? Yes, sir.
Is the plan to put 5G in the towers?
No, this is 4G technology. 5G is being deployed in urban areas. It requires really short, close towers. So there's no, this is not a 5G site,
And would it ever be a 5G site?
unless the technology changes, no. Yes, sir.
Gentleman in the cap back there, please.
You say the halo is just for reference,
Yes, sir.
all right, but on the map that I got, I don't have this current, map that you have here. It says easement on the property, easement. Now, can you put that in writing? You say that you won't come on anybody's property, but it's a narrow road getting up through there.
Well,
So one of the question is, will you put that in writing that you will not build on to other people's property?
We have done that, the site plans, and we can provide you a copy of the site plans and the survey that this planning commission is reviewing, and if they approve it, that's what they approve. And that survey shows that the easement, the access easement, will be entirely on the Lee property. So that's what they're approving, and that's what we'll be doing, okay? That what you're seeing in the drawing you sent, this is just a cutout of the bigger drawing you got. And all we did here was that we highlighted red and blue. It's the same drawing. We did not, other than highlighting red and blue and just cutting out this little piece of it, that's the drawing we sent you, okay? And those drawings, the survey itself shows where the access is, and that's what's before the Plan Commission. So whatever they approve, that's what we're gonna do. We're not gonna do anything different. And I can assure you, there's nothing in those drawings that would put this on your property. All right.
Any other questions from the audience? Hearing none, at this time, I open the mic for anyone who'd like to speak in favor of this proposal. If so, come to the mic, introduce yourself, give your name and address, please.
Thank you, Chairman Lieber and Commissioners. My name is Mike Wilder. I'm the Director of Emergency Management for Danville and Boyle County, kind of an umbrella for public safety, if you will. And I come today on behalf of all of our first responders and all the citizens of the southwest end of Boyle County to talk in favor of the tower. I've looked at all the drawings and had a lot of conversations with a lot of people, and I really think that this is something that we've needed for a long time. As Emergency Management Director, we're mandated every year to formulate plans and communication plans and all of these things to deal with the public safety of our citizens. Each year we have to make a list of all the hazards that face us in Boyle County. And one of the top issues always is nothing but flooding. And any of us that have, I've been a lifelong resident of Boyle County. A good number of you all have as well. And flooding is just of great concern. I owned a business for 42 years on the banks of the Chaplain River. I had 36 inches of water in my facility on 2 occasions, so I know all about flooding. People say, well, why don't you get flood insurance? Well, very honestly, I couldn't afford it, and not a lot of people can. It's a very tough thing to have. But anyway, long story short, flooding is one of our major issues, and the Forkland area is inundated with floods. Rolling Fork runs right through the middle, right along adjacent to Highway 37. It doesn't take a lot of water to get that water over the road. Those folks have no way of being warned of this. The only warning system that's there now is our outdoor warning siren that's at the fire department and next to the community center. And that's just what it is. It's an outdoor warning siren. It's not for people that are inside. It's for people that are outdoors. Each and every time we test them, somebody always calls, Mike, I couldn't hear that siren. Well, where were you? Well, I was down in the basement ironing. Well, you're not going to hear it down there. You're not going to hear it. It's for people that are outdoors. We have a lot of mass communication systems. Today, one of them, of course, other than the regular media, television and radio, a thing called Code Red, which the county funds totally for people. You get text, you can get emails, you get phone calls, you get everything that will warn you of any impending danger. Doesn't have to be a flood, it could be a tornado, ice storm, some type of civil commotion. Those people on the fork don't have any capabilities of getting that on their cell phone because they can't get coverage. It's been an issue over there for many, many years, and I just applaud whomever was able to get this ball rolling to get it to where it is today, and hopefully it will pass. I speak for our first responders. I know June 26th of last year we had a flash flood incident down there from Junction City all the way down to the fork. There was water on the roads a lot of times. I witnessed it firsthand. I just happened to be, I was dispatched down there on the road and actually got trapped for just a few minutes between one side from the community center and the fire department to up to Highway 1108. Water was on both sides of the road. I couldn't get out. And what did I do? I tried to call out radio and everything, no problem. I didn't talk to anybody. So think about that for a minute. I mean, there's a lot of people that could be trapped and we wouldn't be able to get to them simply because they couldn't communicate. And I think this will, it's not going to take care of all the problems, but it'll certainly be a great start. And on behalf of public safety for the residents and citizens of Boyle County, we certainly applaud the idea of doing this. And any questions that public safety wise or first responder wise that I might be able to answer, I'll certainly be glad to try to do that.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else like to speak in favor of this plan? Hearing none, anyone like to speak in opposition? Hearing none, we'll consider the public hearing closed for this item. this point, we can do one of two things. We can table this to the next meeting, or we can go ahead and vote to approve or disapprove, depending on the pleasure of the commission. I'm sorry. Well, so we gotta make a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve,
Okay.
pending the, just a study about that runway issue. Because I just want to make sure that's really safe, it's a safety issue more than anything else.
I have some suggested language,
Yes, Henry, go
if you
ahead,
might be
please.
willing to adopt this into your motion. Okay. The motion would read like this. The applicant, having submitted a complete application as required by law, having demonstrated public need and potential benefit from the proposed tower, and there being no apparent conflict with the comprehensive plan, I move this body to approve this application to construct a wireless communications facility. And addressing your concern, you could also make it conditional on there being sign-off from the airport board, if that satisfies your concern,
Yeah,
and if
yeah.
the applicant agrees to it.
And just to be sure, that it was in the loop to start, really, I know they're really pretty complete about how they do all this stuff. I mean, just to make sure.
The applicant would be agreeable to that condition by the airport board. You mean the local airport?
Yes.
Reviewing
Yes.
it with them? Yes,
Aircraft field.
we'll review it with them.
And no drilling on my street. Thank you.
Have a motion, need a second. Wendy seconds. Question or discussion on the motion to approve with those conditions? Hearing none, all in favor? Votes unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Grant. Public hearing number 2, Whiskey Services LLC, Site Plan Amendment, 4300 Lebanon Road.
Yeah, we did that.
Thank you. I think some folks are gonna roll out, but we'll keep on moving here as they leave. All righty. Next case is a site plan application. Let me get to my report here, but it should go pretty quick. Mr. Kendall Wise is in the room still with Vantage Engineering that prepared 2 documents, and the first one was the plat that you guys saw just a few minutes ago, or maybe a little longer than that now, but as you know, we just added 13+ acres to this property, and what the applicant's moving forward, again, this application was...
Excuse me, ladies. Excuse me, ladies. Excuse me. Please,
And we need to...
outside, please, we have a conversation. Okay, go ahead, Vince. Go ahead.
So, and then this application was sort of before you guys, again, a month or so ago, but was withdrawn because the plat wasn't approved. So the site plan wasn't ready to get to you guys either. This is the site plan. We'll wait till these folks.
Thank you all.
All right. So there's the site plan application. Again, Kendall's in the room, pretty detailed document. It's a little hard to see because he did such a good job putting all the topo on the map. It looks a little shaded, but that's real helpful, by the way, because we get to see things on the property. This is the new plat section. You can see there's 2 rick houses that would be added to the property. There's already 2 on the ground. I'll just call this 1, and we'll call that 3. Number 2 has already got a permit pulled, pad sites there. They're moving forward. There's also some rick houses going vertical on the neighboring property. But what you're seeing now is a revised site plan to add 2 more rick houses, which we'll call 4 and 5. They'll be coming next. This went through technical review, met all our requirements. You can see that's an unsigned document. Kendall's working on getting the signatures, I'm sure, so we can get this thing finished up. But there is the site plan. Again, Kendall's here. Jody Laster's here with the EDP and probably can speak on behalf of the Industrial Foundation. But again, this property at this point in time is still owned by them by way of that plat approval, and then will be conveyed to Whiskey Services, at which time then that would become their property and they'd move forward with Rick House 4 and 5. Not much more we need to add at this point from the staff. We looked at it and it meets all our requirements. And again, Jody's here, Kendall's here. If you guys have any technical questions on timing or phasing of any of that.
Kendall, anything you want to present?
No, but I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay.
More of the same, more of the same activity that's going on out there.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commission? Hearing none, anyone from the public like to testify in favor of this proposal? Hearing none, anyone like to speak in opposition to this proposal? Hearing none, we would consider then this public hearing closed. Commission can table or make a motion to approve or disapprove.
Make a motion to approve.
Vince moves we approve.
I'll second.
Terry seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Thank you. Item 3 has still been tabled from the
Yes.
from the January meeting?
Yeah, it's still tabled. We left on the agenda because it's still an open hearing. And as you remember, we directed them to look at a traffic study. They are working on the traffic study. We anticipate they may come back in March, might be April. We don't know at this point. But it's just tabled at
Okay.
this point in time.
Item 4, Danville-Boyle County Planning and Zoning Commission, application to amend Articles 1, 2, 3, and 6 of the joint zoning ordinance. And that was tabled in January.
And
So
it's
we
ready to be
Need a motion to bring
reconvened.
that off the table.
I'll make a motion to bring it off the table.
Terry moves. Wendy seconds. All in favor? Vote unanimous.
All righty. One of the reasons we tabled it was, again, give you all more time to study it, as well as the city attorney, city staff was looking at several chapters of this. This is a text amendment, which means we're changing the zoning ordinance. And ultimately, that's their zoning ordinance, and it's Boyle County zoning ordinance, and it's Perryville's. And ultimately, at some point in time, Junction City will have one. So it's really 4 different ordinances that we put forward as a recommendation that ultimately they ratify. The goal here is to simplify, as we, again, most of y'all were here last month. Sonia's new. But again, we got 18 articles, very convoluted way to find things in the zoning ordinance. When people call and say, I want to do a daycare, we got to point them to one chapter, another chapter, probably 5 chapters up there you'd have to show them. The goal here is to simplify, consolidate, codify, and get things cleaner. And again, there's what we showed you last month, the old Article 3. We've got a scanned document out there on the web. I had an appraiser call me this week doing a simple, I'll just say they're not refinancing, but someone's basically reevaluating Morning Point and wanted what's called a zoning verification letter. We're just making sure they're in compliance. It might be something internal where they just say, hey, we want to verify they're in compliance with the rules. They had opened the zoning ordinance, looked up the zoning, and said, we don't understand your zoning ordinance. We thought we were zone this, we thought we were zone that. Just a lot of confusion when the zoning ordinance was converted from the old names to the new names, back to other names. So one of the goals here is to get this all organized, get all these amendments codified, and get this thing streamlined. These articles are cookie cutter process articles. 1 is general, 2 is definitions, 3 is all our processes in one place now that would, again, be organized in one article, and 6 is non-conforming. We're not dealing with the wheres and whens, who goes where, when we do what, changing the names, that's all later. That'll be a second phase. The city was studying this document for a while and came back and had 2 minor issues. They are really, really, really minor, and they can take that up at their forum if this goes forward. As far as you guys go, you do have to make a recommendation, and Henry's put forward a generic motion if we get to that point. But again, there's not much I need to tell you different. There were basically 2 changes since the last time. And one, Nancy Estes brought up at the prior meeting, and that's already been put in the book on Article 3. No, I'm sorry, Article 1. If you have that in Article 1, it should be in red line. You should see on page 1-2 of Article 1. Nancy suggested we add the words under landlocked policy. We're at an existing non-surveyed in front of the word property. That was discussed at the last meeting. It's now redlined in the book so you guys can see we added that. That was one change. The other change is on page 3-5 under zoning permits. After much discussion and thought, and by the way, as a side note, if you guys haven't swung by the office, the county building inspector is now located in our office. So since our last meeting, the county judge has asked our county building inspector to potentially come in our office. We talked with leadership here at the Planning Commission. We talked with the city manager if there was any problems. Everyone said it sounded like a good idea. So now the building inspector is in our office, and we're one office of zoning and building, although he still works for the county. He still has a different boss. Obviously, I work for you guys. But the idea that you can get a building permit and zoning permit in the same room, talk to the two guys at one time, is a big jump. And with that, page 3-5 takes that a step further. And we've already talked about this at the advisory committee with you guys. We clearly lay out what a building permit is because it is related to the zoning ordinance. And we clearly lay out what a zoning permit is. And on the next page, we tell you when a CO happens and how they're all tied together on making sure we comply with the zoning ordinance. But 3-5 is a small change since the last time. After much kind of discussion and back and forth, I think the plan is pretty simple, and we've talked about this, is the building inspector is going to catch all the ag property, all the homes and barns and garages. Zoning permits are going to catch multifamily, commercial, industrial. And it's going to be reflected in the budget we're going to talk about later. But the planning commission's not, we're going to try to get away from these dual permits, especially for people building houses, putting in garages, building barns, whatever they need on their property. We're better served to deal with the McDonald's and the auto zones and dollar stores and checking parking and landscape. But if you're building a house, you need to be 8 foot off property line and 2 parking spaces. It's about that simple. Why we would issue a second permit, then you pay the county. So again, right now you pay 2 agencies, 2 fees, 2 pieces of paper to basically go out and build your home, or in some cases, pull your home onto your property. That does happen too. It's a pretty big burden, and it's something we want to move towards streamline. If we're going to streamline the zone ordinance, we're going to work on processes. This is one process that really takes a jump forward by kind of separating these duties between building inspector and zoning permits. So that's a minor change from last time that simply, again, takes the single-family dwellings out of the zoning permit realm and leaves those with the building inspector. And we're going to work through a coordinated effort. He's already working on a permit where if you get a building permit for you're building a house, we will review that permit and put notes on his permit to the property owner saying, here's the rules, or here's a problem with an easement. It'll be a cooperative effort on one permit. There's still the chance today that if you're building a duplex or a fourplex, or you still got to get one from each of us. I don't know how we get there if we stay in the multifamily business, but the goal really should be that hopefully we can do 1 permit, 1 fee, 2 reviews on 1 piece of paper. So this 1 page and those few red lines put that process another step forward with the addition of the building inspector in our office, and we're working together as kind of 1 team, 2 different bosses, 2 different paychecks, however you want to look at it. So I'll be glad to answer any other questions about anything else. Again, we went through these pretty detailed last month, and I'll be glad to answer anything in 1, 2's definitions of that nature. No wheres and whens at this point. That's all later. The advisory committee, we just take that from the start, and that would be Articles 4, 5, and 7. 4 would be standards, 5 would be zoning districts, and 7 would be enforcement. So we're ready to move this forward and get it to the city. They've looked at it, and again, 1 little housekeeping issue in there they brought up, and it's fairly minor, and we're ready to move it to their realm. And then whatever they do with it, they're the city. This is their ordinance. If they tweak it or wordsmith a little bit, that could happen. But we think this is a big improvement moving forward with the process side of it. And I'd be glad to answer any questions, or maybe some folks want to comment. And Henry's also reviewed it, and we've talked and consolidated a couple definitions. They were really minor, and did some housekeeping on just a couple minor. We didn't need the term tourist home or boarding home any longer because they're all consolidated into short-term rentals. So he found a few things that I had left in there as a mistake.
Okay. Questions from the commission? Hearing none. Questions from the audience?
Yes, sir.
Just
At
to
the
Steve, I take it to Steve, or
Um,
just a question for Steve to answer.
Yeah, I want to address it.
Okay. Go ahead and come to the mic, Nancy, if you don't mind, being the public hearing.
You know that my voice carries.
I know. Just go ahead, though, and introduce yourself.
My name is Nancy Estes with Estes Engineering and Surveying. I had a copy of those ordinances at the last meeting. It was my mistake that I didn't read all of it. But Terry asked a question regarding the setbacks. I was hoping that Jeff would be here because I wanted to ask him a question. As builders and surveyors and engineers, we have always used the foundation as the mark to set it back. The way I understood Terry's question was, now we're going to use the eave instead of the foundation. Is that correct?
I'll address that one. He asked that last month. What we're talking about is, we got a property line and we got a structure. And I think what Nancy's saying is the practice has been, we look at the foundation, that's a setback. And what I had said before is, the most outer point of the building is a setback. Just like a sign, if it goes up and it has a frame, we measure from the edge of the structure. The ordinance actually always said the setback is from the structure to the property line. Well, I guess it was interpreted that the structure is the footer. Yet if you have a bonus room or an eave on your house or a gutter, the structure can be beyond the footer. And what we're saying, and it said it before and it still says it, and it's the only way it really works, is the setback is from the structure to the property line. And the structure includes all pieces of that except for patios and steps, but decks, anything covered, all the way out to the edge of the gutter, that would be the structure. So we got a frame and we got a little bit of we got to measure the most outer point to the property line. And we do that now. So there may be an interpretation that starts at the footer. And the reason Nancy's question is relevant is because I think what happens is when you're building a house, you call your surveyor to go out and mark your footer to build the structure. And then a lot of times they're looking at that setback at that point, which makes sense. But really, the builder needs to understand that if it's going to have a 2-foot eave, 6-inch gutter, that he needs to make sure that outer edge is 8 foot from that property line or 10 foot. The other thing that I think is good news is we're going to change the setbacks in phase 2. We're going to kind of get a little more modern with how our setbacks work. So you're going to be impressed with some of those things. We're not going to have 30-foot rears, I don't think anymore, at least not propose it. But I think the side setbacks are notoriously a problem when you got 8 foots or 7.5s or 5s or whatever. Like again, our requirement for a detached building is 5 foot. Well, you know, we got a neighbor right now that's lit us up pretty good about, well, 5 foot is from the edge of that gutter, not from the edge of that wall. And that's the truth. And that's what it says in the book to this day. It says the structure shall be whatever the setback. Setback's defined as the edge of the structure, and it's been interpreted that's the footer, not the gutter. So I don't see an issue with it, except it's just everyone needs to understand that's how we need to move forward. It's how we need to measure setbacks. But I can see it being a problem when someone's marking your footer for a build, and they're looking at it from at that point, a 2-dimensional. Someone's got to let them understand from a plan point that there's still 2 more foot that need to be worked through when we place that house on the property and we eventually make sure it's 8 foot off the property line.
That answer your question, Nancy? You got
Yes,
enough?
no.
Okay.
I'm the only surveyor here right now. We don't always read, has the builders and the other surveyors, besides what's in the new ordinance, been notified of this? Because it's just like the house that last house you all built. It was from the building line to the footer. I'm the only one that knows this.
Yeah.
Don't have an
Speaking-
answer.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
the issue is mainly just making sure everybody knows this. Will it cause some issues? Yeah, because a lot of the lots are narrow lots. Building lots are 50-foot lots, and if you got side setbacks, and then you take another 2-3 feet off that for overhangs, it affects the square footages you can put on some of the smaller lots. And being someone involved with Habitat for Humanity, that affects us now and then.
Very much.
So,
But it's not saying we can't deal with it, but I can tell you that even the people that used to work at planning and zoning interpreted it from the building structure line.
so let me read you
Not the overhang.
let me read you the definition of the old one that's in your strikeout. Very simple. I mean, it's pretty cookie cutter to me. I don't have my glasses on, but it says a line established in the zoning ordinance, generally parallel with and measured from the lot line, property line, defining the limits of a yard which no building or structure may be located above the ground. That's it. So, what does that mean? Well, you gotta go find out what's the definition of structure then. And a structure is everything above the ground. So how you don't count the eaves or the roof, or if you got a bonus room that or something, or a deck, the structure is everything above the ground except for the patio and sidewalk. Now, why it was interpreted that starts at the concrete block and goes out and doesn't catch that extra 2 foot, I don't know. I don't know. I've done this a long time. I don't know how else to measure a setback from a structure except to recognize the structure can be wider vertically than at the 1 inch mark on the ground. I don't think they need to know we really have the same definition. We haven't changed it. It's just an interpretation of where we measure from, and we'll help educate them as we go forward on how we're measuring that. And I don't think we've had many problems with these eaves and gutters, but on some narrow, we've got one problem, and it needed a variance. And that's the way to deal with that when you run into that problem, that we're now 7 foot or we're not gonna make this work. You just simply go get a variance.
Well, I think what the point Nancy's making, and it's a good one, we should make an effort to communicate it, because the way, it may not be a change in the actual written code, it is the way it's been interpreted.
Yeah.
And so we need to communicate that to the builders and the surveyors, just saying, just
Sure.
to avoid a problem, just be aware that this is the way we're gonna be enforcing it going forward,
In 18 months or so, I don't think we've had a single issue yet.
that you know about.
Well, again, that's true, but that gets to a more detailed situation. When we get building permits and zoning permits, we don't get drawings that are to scale.
Right.
We don't get surveys.
Right.
We get a hand-drawn sketch of a footer
Exactly.
that the builder or owner has to go execute on the ground, and it's their responsibility to meet the rules. But the way the rules are written haven't changed as far as how we define what a setback is.
Yeah. I can just say, I assure you, the hand sketches that we've turned in the past have went to the edge of the foundation, not to the overhang, because we didn't know any different.
Yeah. And our tape measure gets kinked and crooked when we get out there sometimes, so we usually work that out with that 6-inch gutter most of the time, so.
If I
Steve?
can make the point, though, generally, the way that we were checking things out, we were going out when the foundation was done.
Yeah.
We weren't going out to measure after the unit was built, so, yeah, we were going from there. But now, if we were going out and measuring a unit that was done, we were going from the eaves, so,
Yeah.
you know.
It's just an
should
awareness.
be-
I mean, Nancy's point, it's awareness. Let's make it an attempt to make people aware.
You know,
Could do it.
I'd say 90% of the homes in Boyle County are in the city of Danville. According to that, are illegal, because it was all done from the foundation.
We just have the rule, we don't build and we don't, that's on the property owner and their bank.
Well, we can fix it going forward.
We're going to fit, well, we have, and we've been measuring, as Lisa indicated, she spoke up because she's been the one going out there. We've realized it's not a good idea to go out at the footer. Really, our responsibility is to go out at the end and figure out what's actually been constructed meets the setback. In the construction phases, if the owner knows the setbacks and builds it too close, then two options, move it or get a variance, and that's what we do. So,
Yeah, but I
yeah.
think her point is that they don't have the pre-knowledge, unless I'm mistaken, that is what you're looking at, is the hangover. So basically, could that be part of the process, even if she goes out to measure at the eaves, at the foundation, to
Look.
say, do you plan on having more in front of
Well-
this or not? You know, I mean, that's a simple question.
Well, we don't
It
wanna
could be on a
get-
piece of paper that they
Yeah.
have to apply.
Well, we don't want to get in the weeds here, but one of the, I think, mistakes this agency's made is we're not surveyors. She is.
Yeah.
And I've worked in a jurisdiction fairly big, and guess what? The planning and zoning guys
Yeah.
don't go out and try to determine anything. That's a surveyor's job. What our job is to communicate the rules,
Okay.
and the builder and the surveyor and the engineer need to execute those rules. But what we were doing was going out and measuring in the mud with a wheel to an invisible line on the ground, and we're not a surveyor, to say it looks good. What we need to do, and this is part of the streamlining, is the permit comes in and you show me you're gonna build a house, and we say, you gotta be 8 foot off property line, 30 foot off the front, and stay out of utility easements. And we review those and we communicate those back to you, and you and your builder have to execute those. And you would hope on the back end, when a building CO is issued, in bigger towns, the surveyor's involved at that phase, to go back out and verify, or during the phase, that everything's being executed right. But for the planning commission to go out and attempt to measure two-dimensionally or vertically, I don't think that's our role. Our role is to communicate rules and then make sure they were complied with on the back end or deal with it as enforcement on the back
Yeah,
end.
that's what I meant, the process. I mean,
Yeah, that-
obviously, I'm not informed about the process, but if the process includes a safeguard, because you don't want a builder
Yeah.
building the thing up, and then you say, hey, it's, by the way, it's not in compliance.
Well, it gets back to the banks and the mortgage companies. They do check some of this.
correct.
Again, we've already incorporated that. We've moved way past this point. We are already not out in the field measuring footers any longer. We are looking on the back end, and as you guys just heard, we're gonna get out of the zoning permits altogether on residential. And that burden's gonna be between building permit and building CO. There'll be some review in there, but again, that burden falls on the property owners. And if the property owner's smart, they get a good builder, the builder uses a surveyor, they stake the corners, they check all that, and we move on. So,
That's Neil.
If you were to include in the rules, something like, including the eaves,
well, it
That
said,
would make it
well,
complete.
it says it as the definition of structure, it's all covered.
if you were to include it there, including the eaves, then maybe they would recognize that it's not just the footings.
Well, again, I think our two definitions of structure right now and setback, I think cover that. Because we say pretty much what a setback is and what structure is, so.
Any other questions? Anybody want to speak in favor?
I had something I wanted to toss
Okay.
in.
And-
While we're talking about setbacks, Steve, there, we have carve-outs for patios and steps. Would it make sense to have an exclusion also for fences, or is that dealt with separately?
It's all in the ordinance and under our definition of structure and then definition of fence. In Article 2, it clearly says what's required to meet setback and what doesn't. So again, I'd have to get into Article 2 and read you each definition, but we've got them pretty clear in here on fence and,
But none of that has changed.
Uh,
You're just clarifying them.
yeah, none of it. Our definition of structure changed slightly because it didn't match the state law, and the state law is very clear on what a structure is in KRS 100. And I'll read you what a structure is. Chairman's telling me that, it's like the Oscars here, the music's fixing to play, so we need to wrap this up. This says, anything constructed, erected, or attached to the use of which requires a location on the ground or in the ground as may be required for the purpose of carrying out this ordinance. The term shall not include poles and appurtenances therefore used for the provision of public utilities. Structure includes any building or accessory building, mobile homes, signs, towers, billboards, porches, decks, swimming pool, or other recreation or commercial pools and retaining walls, and gas and liquid storage tanks, fences and other man-made structures and/or infrastructure. So a fence is a permit, but it's not bound by the setback, and that's when we get into Article 4, we'll clearly define when fences, they'll have 0 setback, and the utility building has a 5-foot, and the attached has an 8-foot, and all of that.
Okay, so that's why I jumped on this, because structure does include fence, but you're saying in Article 4, it's gonna say.
They'll
that
tell
can-
us
Okay,
where and when we build fences,
Okay.
and what we do in the front setback versus rear setback, and they can be on the lot line and on and
Okay.
on and on.
thank you.
Nancy?
May I ask, I know Lisa has 90% of our email addresses, and that the zoning office send letters or emails to the surveyors and the home builders association to let them know of this new change, so that we go forward and not, and somebody comes in and says, well, I didn't know that. But if she could send us an email, so that we would have something.
You okay with that, Lisa?
Yes.
Thank you very
We'll
much.
be done.
Thank you.
Hearing nothing else, we'll consider this hearing closed, and commission may vote to table or approve or disapprove.
Well, I make a motion, we vote to approve Articles 1, 2, 3, and 6 as submitted.
A second.
Motion's been made and second to approve. Question or discussion on the motion?
There was a form motion included in the presentation, which I would encourage consideration of. I can read it if it's too small up there.
That's okay, that's what Terry actually said.
Oh, okay, yeah, I think so too.
You okay with it, Terry?
Yes.
All right, Vince, you okay with it? All right. All in favor? Vote unanimous. Thank you, Henry. Moving on, no advisory committee, no personnel committee report. Number 3, budget committee report.
Everybody could grab their fiscal year 2020 preliminary budget that's in your packet. This is what we're going to be submitting as a preliminary budget to the city and the county. I'm just going to go over maybe probably about a dozen lines. And I'm just gonna talk to two columns. If you start, it's the fourth column in from the left that talks about fiscal year 19 projected year end. That's our current projected, budget for our spending for this year. And then if you go to the second to the right column, second to the last column all the way to the right, the fiscal year 20 budget preliminary, that's the one we're submitting. That's the only two columns we're gonna talk to quickly. And if you first go to line number 20, you go down, line number 19, that shows our total revenue that we're expecting. And if you look at the current year, which is your fourth column over, it's about 188,000. Under the budget that we're submitting, it's 184,000, which is a reduction of about $3,400 in terms of what we're expecting to have as revenue. And the reason, and the changes from what we're having this year to what we're budgeting next year, the first one would be in line 13, if you go up from line 19, which is the zoning permits. Steve talked to the fact that we're looking at reducing our duplicate zoning permits between what Rusty charges for a building permit and what we're charging for zoning permits. And so that expected reduction is in that number, as well as there's a little bit of conservatism in terms of the zoning permits. So there's a $12,000 reduction in expected fees. And then if you go up to the next line I want to talk to is line 3, which is the contribution we're expecting from the county. And we're asking for $10,000 more than we did last year. And we've been asking that for 2 or 3 years in a row. This year, I guess we're hoping that we'll get it. And then line 2 is what we get from the city, which is $75,000, which is unchanged, is what we're asking for. So we're asking for the city and the county to contribute the same amount. And if the county does that, then we'll be able to have the fee reduction that we have in the expected fee reduction. If the county doesn't, then we'll have to see whether or not we think we can go ahead with the expected fee reduction. Then if you go up to line number 1, that's our starting bank balance, how much money we have in the checkbook, I guess you would say, when we start the year. Well, this year we had about $78,000. We expect to have about $72,000 when we end this year. And we're slowly kind of drawing that down as the city and county wants us not to have as big a balance that we've been carrying. So that covers revenue. So again, total, one more line on revenue. Line 20 then is just our fees plus our bank balance. So you can think of that as a total amount of money we have to spend next year. And this year it was $266. Next year it'll be $256. So about a $10,000 reduction, with most of that being the fact that we have less money in the bank when we start than we did this year. Let's talk about total expenditures. You have to flip the page over. And we're going to go to, I guess it would be line 69, which is total expenditures. You can see we're expecting our total expenditures to be down about $2,000 in our budget next year compared to what we expect to spend this year, going from $194,000 to $192,000. And the pluses and minuses that we've had on that, one of the bigger ones is under line number 66, which is where we're setting some money aside to help pay for that smart growth conference that the mayor has requested. We're setting about $4,000 aside for that. That did not exist in this year's budget. And the only other couple lines I want to talk to under expenditures is on the prior page. If you go to line 35 under total personnel costs, we're expecting that to be about $9,000 less next year in budget compared to this year, going from $138,000 to about $129,000, with essentially all that, or almost all that, being up in line number 22, which is the office manager's position that we eliminated when we went from 3 people to 2, and that's about an $8,800 reduction in spending. And those are kind of the highlights of the revenue and spending. And so then the other line then that we would probably look at would be line number on the next page 70, which is net income. When you add our bank balance plus our fees minus our spending, we'll be going from about a $71,000, $72,000 net income this year down to a forecasted $64,000 next year, because again we're expecting less revenue primarily due to, and a little more spending. The fee reduction and the smart growth spending are kind of pulling that down. And then I guess the only other column we might talk to would be total reserves, which is line number 73. We'll have a total reserves of about $64,000 next year in our budget submission, of which $18,000 is the kind of the, I wouldn't say, but the recommended operating reserve that we carry. It's 10% of our total spending. And then the $45,000, which is again, sort of our reserves are above that. And you can call it legal construction reserves, whatever it is, but it's an excess reserve. So that's the highlight of what we're submitting to the city and county.
Okay.
Questions? Hearing none, need a motion?
Motion to accept.
Vince moves we accept, approve.
Second.
Wendy seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor. There being no other new business, we'll go to bullet 1 under item 4, and that's nomination and election of officers.
Our bylaws say we do that in February, and short notice, again, we don't talk about this much, to take effect in March, although last year it kind of happened in March and took effect in April, but in theory, we have one-year officers. We're supposed to do them in February, and totally your all's protocol on that. We technically have 3 officers, chair, vice chair, and secretary, although the staff serves as a secretary. And you guys take it from there. And again, if you want to do it next month when all the members are here, if you want to, but our bylaws say we're supposed to do it in February, effective March 1. And we got to have folks signing checks and doing all that stuff, so we really don't need a lapse in our leadership on, especially the chair and vice chair.
I guess the only question I would have, without the vice chair here, do we know what their response would be if we made a motion to nominate Jerry again to continue?
I suggested to Susie and Jeff, it might be a big mistake missing this meeting.
Jeff will accept, I'm pretty sure. So, floor is open for motions to elect and/or wait till the March meeting. Steve would like to see us go ahead, I'm sure. So,
I'll make a motion that we nominate you and Jeff again, and the staff as secretary.
I second that.
motion's made by Jim to retain the current officers. Wendy seconds. Question, discussion on the motion. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. It was a long, hard campaign. Finally made it through.
Clean campaign.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Updates there, Steve, you want to?
Yeah, and I'll finish this up. And again, I just want to first say I really appreciate what you guys are doing as a planning commission. Pretty impressive, all the stuff we just knocked out. Like always, great questions, and you guys are top notch the way we're doing all this, for real. And this kind of relates to Sonia sitting at the end of the table there. Just wanted to bring you an update on what we did in the last 60 or 90 days. We had to get an interlocal agreement amended, which was a big deal, to get Junction City to back here. That has gone back several months. Prior county judge, Jerry and Jeffrey, sitting in a meeting with the mayor, city manager, prior judge. We've had to hash out an interlocal agreement draft. That's not something that came to you all because the governments had to do it. It then went out to all the governments in the month of January and February to get ratified by all 4 governments. A new interlocal agreement has now been approved, recorded in the courthouse, sent to the Secretary of State's office, as well as Department of Local Government. I appreciate Lisa's help on some of the technical things. That was step 1 before we could get Junction back. Step 2 was they also had to approve our current comprehensive plan. So on February 14th, they adopted the current goals and objectives of the current comprehensive plan. That's a requirement to get them back to, according to Henry and Bruce, interlocal agreement, comprehensive plan. We got that done. They also had to appoint a member, as they did. So what's left, and 2 issues. One issue, the subregs. According to what Henry has advised us, the subregs came back into effect countywide, including Junction City, the day the interlocal agreement was approved. So the interlocal agreement has reestablished subregs, but however, in Junction City, there is no current zoning ordinance. There is no current future land use map at this point in time. So we have subregs, but we have no zoning still to this day. And then you see the last bullet, future land use map. Sonia served on the committee with 2 other elected officials. She's a prior city council member before she became a planning commissioner. And we've been working with a 3-member committee with the mayor and the police chief involved, and we've been creating a Junction City future land use map. Been about 4 drafts or 5 drafts of that so far. It's real close to be ready to bring it to you guys. We've met with the airport on that area of the county. Goes a little broader than Junction City. It's just the southern part of the county. So the next step is to get a future land use map in play. We need to have a formal public hearing on that. It's really close. We're gonna take it back to the committee one more time. And then, once we got the future land use map, we got the goals and objectives, we got the subregs, and the last big bar is getting the zoning ordinance back into play in Junction City. So there's been a lot of moving pieces to this. It wasn't just as simple as putting a member back on the board. We gotta get all the regulations put in. So I just wanted to give you an update. What's coming your way is that future land use map. And this zoning ordinance amendment you're moving forward is not going to Junction City at this point in time, because there is no future land use map and they're not ready to adopt the zoning ordinance. It'll be going to Perryville, Boyle, and Danville. And how do you adopt half a zoning ordinance in a community? The other communities still have the whole zoning ordinance that we've just recently amended. So we're gonna take Junction, a brand-new book, later on. And it may not be till fall or even next year, possibly next calendar year. It's gonna take a while, and they wanna sort of fine-tune that uniquely to their city, since they currently don't have an ordinance. And in addition, they gotta adopt a map on top of that. So there's no map, no zoning ordinance currently today in the city limits of Junction City. So just wanted to give you an update on that. Sonia's been a big part of that from day one, being an elected official prior, and she's been working on that committee. We've been working on that a while now, probably 6 months or better. So that's just an update on that, and let you know next month, we'll hopefully be bringing you that future land use map. If it's ready, it may be the next month after that.
Questions on any of these issues for Steve? Hearing none, any other good for the order? Motion to adjourn. Wendy makes, Lynn seconds. All in favor, we're adjourned. Thank you all very much.
I'll take any of that.